we're just, when is the British election? It's in
7th.
the 2 days.
2 days.
Less if you're in Britain right now. And so let's go to the phones, and Nathan Ray, I'm just going to W this, our unpaid correspondent in the UK is on the phone. Nathan, remind people where you live and give us an update on what's happening with the elections.
Right, so I live in Manchester in the UK, UK's second city. So
now I understand. Let me just get this out of the way. Manchester, completely a Muslim city. Is that correct?
There are parts.
Oh, is that? I'm sorry. That's Birmingham.
Right.
Okay.
That's Birmingham. Yeah. They would say that. I used to work in a primary school up in Oldham, where there was riots in 2001. And the school I worked on was 99% Muslim, Bangladeshi families mainly in Oldham. But that was just the school. If you walked out the school gates and walked around, no, there's plenty of white people, Christian people all the way around it. So,
all right. Well, if you say so.
Yeah. So. Yeah, the reports of the Muslim cities were slightly exaggerated, I think. Yeah, so where the election stands at the moment, the numbers haven't changed in the last month. So, some parties have gone up and down at a few points here, a few points there, but basically the Conservatives and Labour are now neck and neck. The next biggest party will be the Scottish National Party. And then followed by the Liberal Democrats, and then.
All right, now characterize for people who don't follow British politics where these parties are. I mean, relative to what we understand in this country, if you can.
Yeah, I would say the Conservatives, as on average, the Conservatives would be to the right of your Democrats, but probably to the left of most of the Republican Party in the US. I mean, the very few.
It's almost as if Susan Collins was actually the person that she claims to be, and there was a lot of them.
Sure, but nobody, or very few people in the Conservative Party are saying that they're going to dismantle the NHS publicly. I mean, some people might want to do it, by the back door and privatise the NHS by the back door, but nobody's coming out and saying, government healthcare is, we shouldn't be doing it, that kind of thing. So then you've got Labour, which is the next biggest party, which would be to the left of your Democrats, probably, Bernie Sanders kind of say, because you've been talking about him the last week or so, probably about there. Then you've got the Liberal Democrats who are in between those two parties on different issues. Depending on what the issue is, they might be more towards the Conservatives, more towards the Labour. But that's the Liberal Democrats, and they're supposedly big on election reform and civil liberties and that kind of thing. And then you've got the SNP, which is going to be, the biggest winner from the election. And the SNP are to the left of Labour, but their big issue is obviously they want independence for Scotland. So they don't fall neatly on the left-right axis there. And then the Greens are to the left of the Labour Party, and UKIP, which is the UK Independence Party, are to the right of the Conservatives on most issues. And that's kind of like the full spread of the parties with the biggest poll numbers in the country.
And so, I mean, and what will happen in the event? I mean, does it appear that any one party will be able to? I mean, we've had in the past sort of, I guess, unity governments, right, where there is theoretically two parties that reach across sort of the ideological spectrum. I mean, what do you think? What do you think it's likely we're going to see in terms of who will be controlling the government?
Well, this is the big question, because at the moment there's only 4 or 5 seats, depending on which poll you look at, 4 or 5 seats between the Labour and the Conservatives, but neither of the parties have got a majority. So the problem is in the UK, we don't have a written constitution. So at the moment, nobody really knows what happens when there's a hung parliament or where nobody gets a majority. Or at the moment, even if somebody has even if the Conservatives and Lib Dems go into coalition, they still won't have a majority. So what happens? So nobody knows. Like, officially, the rules aren't clear on it. So what people have been saying, and what the Conservatives and the Lib Dems have been spinning heavily over the past few days, is they're saying the party who wins the most seats in the election should get the first should have like the first attempt to form a coalition, to then form a government, to then to being in the country. But there's no real reason why that should be the case, but they're spinning it really hard, and the newspapers are coming out, hard, saying, the democratic way of doing things should get, the biggest party should form the government. But there's lots of democracies across Europe and things where often that isn't the case. If you can't put a coalition together, you just can't form a government, even if you are the biggest party.
What will happen at that point? I mean, would the Conservatives go into coalition with the UK IP?
So the document that people are following at the moment is called, I've forgotten the name of it, but it's basically a document which is given to the civil service, because in this country, the civil service basically runs everything. We don't have political appointees running everything. So the government is formed, but the civil service basically runs the country. So the head civil servants in the country are very powerful in this situation, because it's the head civil servants who kind of chair the meetings where all these details about forming the coalitions and stuff are hammered out. And this all happened after the 2010 election. This all happened behind closed doors, and deals were done and things were agreed on, and people weren't expecting it to be a hung parliament last time. Or they weren't admitting beforehand. So nobody was really prepared. Whereas this time, the parties are coming out basically saying, what they're going to do or what they're not going to do, going into this situation. Anyway, the civil servants have been given this. They have this document, which is basically a rule book saying the incumbent should be allowed to form a government, if they can.
The incumbents should be.
Yeah, but they can't at the moment. The way it stands, if the Conservatives went into coalition with the Lib Dems and maybe a couple of UKIP wins and a couple of the parties from Northern Ireland, because in all of this, there's some parties in Northern Ireland, and the Northern Ireland parties, it's just really complicated over there, so I'm not going into it. But a few of the parties from Northern Ireland could stand with the Conservatives and things like this. But if they can't get a majority and pass a budget and have David Cameron or whoever the leader of the Conservative Party will be in a few weeks' time, if they can't fight off a confidence vote, a no confidence vote, and pass a budget, they can't form a government. So,
wow.
But on the same side, the Labour has said that they won't go into coalition with SNP, because although on the left-right spectrum they're very close to the SNP, Labour wants to keep the country together, the unions, and
right.
Obviously Scottish National Party is separatist, so they won't go into coalition. But they could have an agreement with the SNP and maybe the Lib Dems and the Green candidates and a couple of the ones from Northern Ireland, where they can, when a confidence vote comes up in the House of Parliament, Miliband could survive it. And when they wanted to pass a budget, there'd obviously be a lot of wrangling and negotiation between the parties beforehand, but they could pass a budget. So that's what you need to look at. You need to find the party or the group of parties which can pass the budget and can survive a confidence vote in the House of Parliament.
What would the Liberal Democrats, what would they ask of either the Conservatives to go into coalition with them or Labour?
Well,
and would they ask the same of both?
Well, it's difficult because what they went into asking for last time with the Conservatives, they asked for these certain electoral reforms. One was the fixed-term parliaments, which is why we've got the 5-term fixed-term parliaments. But that can be changed with a vote in the House, in the Parliament, because that's just a straight-up vote. They also asked for a referendum to change the electoral system from first past the post, which is causing all this mess in the first place, to I can't remember. I think it was the single transferable vote or the first past the post, not first past the post. PR. I can't remember the exact wording, but they lost that referendum. People didn't go for it. So but ironically, if they'd gone to that system now, they would lose most of their seats. They would hardly get any seats. So the fact that their electoral forms for the Lib Dems didn't work out in this last Parliament, in this last government, has saved them seats this time. So I don't know how hard the Lib Dems will push for electoral reform this time round, either with the Conservatives or with Labour, because it looks like it's not really helping them this time round. So I don't know. It depends. It really does. It
sounds
really
like
does
they're just going to
depend.
want good parking spaces.
Well, yeah. Well, you hear all the rumours of there's a in each ministry, in each government department, you have the minister, and then you have the junior ministers. So there's Lib Dem junior ministers in every most of the departments of government, and there's all stories about them, being given just like a holding position in the department with nothing to do, and all this. But I think basically it comes down to if Labour wins more seats than the Conservatives, which is possible but not likely, Ed Miliband will be able to form a government. If the Conservatives win more seats than Labour, which is likely, they might not be able to form a government. So you might have Labour getting into forming a government anyway. But also, if they lose, if the Conservatives lose worse than is expected right now, David Cameron might not be the leader of the Conservative Party, within the next couple of months, depending on how they do. So there might be, the Conservatives might say, right, we'll get rid of David Cameron and we'll bring in Boris Johnson or somebody else who can lead the party, or they might call for an election, in 6 months' time, and because they have more money than Labour, they can outspend Labour, in 2 elections in 1 year, And so basically everything's up in the air. If you look at the polls, everything's within the margin of error, within 2 or 3 points of each other. And I think we just got to wait till Friday morning to see what happens.
All right. Well, hopefully we can talk to you then, Nathan Ray, our completely unpaid correspondent from the UK, and
not very unbiased either.
Well,
so,
there you
like
go.
I said, I'm standing for the Green Party in the local elections this time round. So, so take
That's
everything
fine. We have
take
no
everything
problem
I've said with that slant on it.
Well, that goes without saying. I mean,
Yeah.
You get what you pay for. If you wanted unbiased reporting, there you can go.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Nathan. Good luck.
Can I just mention something that the guys were talking about yesterday with Russell Brand coming out for Labour?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that. The best tweet about that I saw, the best comment of that, saying it'd have been helpful if he'd come out for Labour before voting registration closed 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So all his followers and his viewers could actually now follow his advice. So,
yeah, I mean, just to remind people that we had talked about it on this program, I don't know when it was, a month or two ago, where Russell Brand had said, don't vote. And I think it was Johnny Rotten had said, that's ridiculous, ridiculous advice. And I agreed. I think that's no surprise. But he said, now come out and said, yes, you should vote for them. But, registration period has passed and probably a lot of people hadn't registered. But Nathan, good luck. So will we know the outcome of your election on Friday as well?
Oh, yeah. You'll know that. I'm not going to win. But, I mean, it'd be nice if I did. But my wife would kill me if I did. So,
all right. Well,
not gonna win.
good attitude.
Upside,
Thanks.
downside. Very
All right.
clearly laid out
Appreciate it.
there.
Thanks. That's why.
Okay, cheers.
Right. I mean, I think it's quite clear why you ask how is it possible that Nathan Ray is such a good but unpaid correspondent. It's that attitude. It's that attitude.